What is the question to life? Is it A, B, C, or D?
C.
It's correct.
Yeah. Welcome, everyone, to the Awful Takes podcast, the show where we talk about movies, pop culture stuff, music eventually. I know I say that in the intro, but we're going to do it eventually. And we have really bad takes on them. At least I consider my takes really bad. So the title is pertaining to me, not Wallied.
Mine are okay, I would say. Some are good, some are, But,
and for those of you who have been watching the Olympics, I think I know why Australia failed at the breakdance segment. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I didn't see that one.
I'll just say it was probably because Furiosa didn't do so hot in the box office that Australia is kind of struggling right now.
Well, they got Bluey, though. So. Yeah.
If you get the time, look that up. It's horrendous.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
But yeah, we're here, episode 11. We got a great film to talk about. We got some things to go over. Timestamps are going to be down in the description and also on the sliders and in the description of our Spotify, wherever you're joining us. So if you want to skip ahead to the review, please feel free to do so. If not, I'm going to start the memoir of my life right now.
Who are you?
I'm a very interesting man. I almost said confused man, but that would have came out really bad.
Oh, okay. Someone holding you hostage here?
Yeah. So, yeah. No, I'm kidding. All right. Some movie news that recently came about, and I want to just say it and just get your blank reaction.
Let's hear it.
Incredibles 3.
Oh, Incredibles 3. Okay.
Brad Bird's coming back.
Oh, and he's coming back. Okay. Promising, okay. I would say. I think I was very disappointed by the second Incredibles, unfortunately. But I feel like maybe this can wrap up the trilogy, I will say, pretty well, hopefully. I think it'd be really cool for if they, with them doing a third one, if they can maybe explore Dash and Violet like older and more maybe like teenagers or adults.
That'd be cool.
So it seems promising. And I don't know, I guess after Inside Out 2, I was kind of like, okay, well, they seem like they wanted to make that sequel. And if Brad Bird is especially coming back to Incredibles, it gives me a bit of faith, even if I wasn't crazy about like the second film.
Yeah, I put a lot of stock in Brad Bird. I know a couple of his recent films haven't been the greatest, but he's made some of the greatest animated movies of all time.
Yep.
I love The Iron Giant. It's one of my favorite movies.
Nice.
Incredibles 1 was just so great. Yeah. And then Ratatouille.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it was so funny with Ratatouille, like seeing the promotion for that movie. I was a little older and I was just like, that looks kind of weird. I don't know if I want to see that. And little did I know it was going to be one of Pixar's best movies. So bringing him back as a writer-director, I'll always give him a chance. Even after the second one, I agree with you. It was pretty disappointing after waiting so long.
Yeah.
So I'm more interested to see where it goes and how he wants to approach this part 3.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can do something a little more drastic, a little more, challenging, because I felt like the second one really kind of just played it safe a little bit.
Yeah, it felt like a retread of the first film, I noticed, where it was like the roles were switched, where it was like Elastigirl and now Mr. Incredible is like a stay-at-home dad, which could be interesting and you could do something with, but I don't feel like it was really executed all that well.
And to wait that long just to do a simple role reversal, I'm like, okay. I mean,
all right, you do you, I guess.
Whatever. So we'll see. I hope they can close it out. Well, not close it out. We don't know how many they're making, but at least, have a solid end to this trilogy of movies.
Nice little bow tie.
Yeah. Actually, for those of you guys who don't know, D23 was yesterday. Okay. That is the Disney Expo where they announced some of these movies to show the shareholders what the projects and they're working on and everything. And obviously they invite fans to that event, and they're allowed to be a part of it.
Oh, cool.
So they announced Incredibles 3. They showed more of Toy Story 5. Director is going to be Andrew Stanton, I believe.
Okay.
Director of
Pixar
Bugs
veteran.
Life.
Yeah.
He's a veteran at Pixar, which I found that kind of interesting because 3, they went with Lee Unkrich, who's kind of an unknown. And then 4, I believe that they got... who made 4? I don't remember. I think it was another like lower, director who's kind of up and coming. So I think it's interesting that they're going back to like a veteran who, has been at Pixar for a while.
Yeah. We'll see how that turns out.
We'll see how it turns out. I mean, obviously for me with Inside Out 2 coming out and seeing a fresh new director come into the spotlight and totally deliver, I was really happy about. But I guess maybe with Toy Story 5, they want to be a little more safe, which kind of has me worried. They showed some images from the movie, or maybe like concept art. Apparently, it's going to focus on the toys and their kind of viewpoint on kids with technology now, like kids on playing games, iPads, things like that.
Oh, okay.
Which sounds interesting. Obviously, Toy Story has always had that kind of commentary on kids and stuff, all the way down to the first one. I mean,
yeah,
the fact
Sid.
that like Sid,
Yeah.
Woody, like he's like an older toy. Then you have the new action figure Buzz coming in, and then in 2 you had the toy collector, who's someone who just know. And then 3 you had preschool toys, daycare. And then 4, you had like that whole antique store,
carnival thing too,
and kids who make their own toys with like just items. With Forky. So they've always had that kind of commentary. So I guess I'm not surprised that they are gonna do something like this for the next one.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't explore it in 4. I feel like that's something they would have explored in 4, but okay, let's see how that turns out.
So we'll see how it turns out. I guess I would say I'm excited. I guess I'm in the minority who enjoyed 4. I didn't think it was as good as the first 3, but I thought it was pretty decent. I would say definitely above average for me. Again, I know I'm in the minority. I know a lot of people didn't like 4, I guess.
Yeah, it's okay for me. I think I prefer just kind of 3 being like the last one, I feel like 4 just kind of butchers Woody's character just a bit for me, so
it did feel a lot like kind of an epilogue story, I know they kind of said like they were trying to hype it up as like, no, this needed to be told, but after I saw it, I was like,
it felt like one of more of those like shorts that they would be releasing like on like TV for like a few years. It felt like that, but kind of like as a feature length film.
But I really enjoyed 4, so I guess I'm excited. And they also showed some stuff from Marvel. They showed Daredevil, their new season, which looks pretty cool. I'm excited for that. They had a lot of cool announcements, but nothing too like surprising. I guess I would say I wasn't expecting that Incredibles 3 announcement.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll have to wait and see. So yeah, if you guys want to check out any of those D23 announcements, I'd recommend doing so. I guess that was the main one I was really looking forward to seeing what Wallied's reaction was.
Yeah,
Incredibles 3.
Surprised for sure. I didn't know they were actually going to do one. So
we'll have to talk about a Brad Bird film at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to recommend one because I do think like he's easily like one of my favorite like animated directors.
Yeah.
So.
And his first live action movie, Mission Impossible: Ghost
Protocol.
Protocol.
Good. I really like it.
So good. That's one of my favorite Mission Impossible movies.
One of my favorite action sequences in any movie.
So good. So let's see. There was one other bit of movie news that I wanted to mention. Recently came out, actually yesterday, August 9th, that Joaquin Phoenix had his movie that he was making with Todd Haynes.
I heard about
this. It's like
this.
a romance movie. And he has allegedly left the project and just totally stormed off set, and the movie now is dead. They
Yeah.
were starting to shoot, and I believe like their main goal was to start shooting in like the next 3 to 5 days,
Yeah, pretty
and he
much.
has left. And now you have a whole production crew who is there. You have writer, everyone's there. Um, the project was pretty much pitched by him. I believe he's a co-writer of the
Yeah,
movie.
he did like a lot of the story and substance for the film, pretty
Yeah.
much. So,
And I found that really strange for
yeah.
him to just totally back out and leave. Hearing one of the producers talk about it, I guess she says that pretty much we were all there to help him make his vision and do what he wanted, and he just kind of
Just,
didn't want to do it anymore. He got cold feet or whatever, and he's gone.
yeah.
What do you think of that?
It's kind of crazy because it's like it's very last minute and it's like so far into pre-production, getting close to like production. It's kind of unfortunate because it seemed kind of promising, especially because I did like Todd Haynes' last film, May December. So I was curious to see what he was going to do with this like crime detective film, but now with him kind of out of the project, I'm not sure what's gonna happen. I was kind of I did read a bit of that, and I kind of heard that Todd Haynes is trying to look for someone else at the moment. So hopefully he can maybe find someone, but it just really sucks, and it's just kind of unfortunate, But
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It just surprised me, honestly. I just was like, oh, okay.
I'm a Joaquin Phoenix fan. I'm not, always first to see his movies, but he's been in a lot of movies and roles that I just love. So it's kind of disappointing to hear that he would do something like this, mainly because you're one of the people who's bringing this project together. And for those of you guys who don't know, when you have production crews and everything there, people are getting paid,
Yeah.
People will sign up for these jobs months in advance, sometimes years, to be a part of this project, and they block out time for it. And that's why anytime, they're actors, they have very, like specific contracts on when they need to be on set, what they're allowed to do, because it hinges on them. So when these actors aren't there, it can really, damage a production and the way it was going to work. So for him to just walk off set and leave is really disappointing, because production crews are there. Like,
Yeah,
these
they're
are
taking all of this time out of their, day to go over there and go shoot and everything. It's like, well, now you can't shoot anything anymore.
Yeah, and that's really like unfortunate to hear, because it's like I wouldn't think of him to do something like this.
Yeah.
And it's sad, because in our world right now, actors do get paid quite a bit compared to these production crews and stuff. So they kind of
Yeah.
rely on these types of jobs, to pay for things, to get bread on the table. And for him to just totally sideline the crew out of nowhere and just leave is like, wow, that's really disappointing.
Yeah.
And I'm a little angry about it. I just don't know why he would do that without at least having like a backup, or
Something.
maybe one of his actor friends could step in. I don't know, something. It's just really disappointing.
Yeah, that's very unfortunate. So I also did read a bit about how like he's done this a couple of times. Like he did it for, I guess, the first Joker, but then like the directors kind of like convinced him to come back. So this seems to kind of be like a common thing that he does, where he's
Yeah.
like gets skeptical last minute and then just all of a sudden is like, okay, I'm back on the project. So I kind of hope the director can convince him to come back, because
Yeah.
it'd be, it just seems kind of like a dick move to just like,
Really?
just leave your crew and like put all this time and money into like a project that's like just not even gonna get made.
Yeah, and again, like to have people, a whole crew, like dedicate this, because they could have been working on another movie,
Yeah.
and to have them all show up there and block out time for this guy, and for him to not follow through and just, I guess just do what he wants for the time being is really upsetting. So hopefully, like you say, they can get him back. I mean, I'm I'm really disappointed in him right now. I mean, if he's been doing this quite consistently, like he's gonna end up burning bridges with people who just they don't want to work with him, you know?
Yeah.
Because at
Yeah.
some point, I mean, come on, like I work in a food service job, and when people call out, it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And you know, like you hope they find a replacement or you know some sort of coverage, but this is on a massive level. Like there are hundreds of people there ready to help him put his vision together and work with him, and he just bailed. I don't know. Hopefully we'll hear more about that story. I mean, I like you, I was looking forward to the movie. Maybe, you know, Joaquin Phoenix always, anytime his name is mentioned, my interest is already, you know,
Peaked.
there.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed they can pull it together. If not, I don't know. Joaquin Phoenix might be an actor who obviously I'll love his acting, but personality wise and person wise, maybe not so much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
All right.
I guess that's it in movie news that I had heard. Not too much. I mean, obviously the big announcements and stuff, but that Joaquin Phoenix thing was something I definitely wanted to mention.
Yeah, for sure. Nothing about Ridley Scott.
Nothing yet. All right, guys. I recommended a Danny Boyle film, Slumdog Millionaire. Came out in 2007. And I am a big fan of this film. Again, I would say it's a toss-up between this and 127 Hours. It just depends on how I'm feeling on which one is my favorite Danny Boyle film. But recently, I just been thinking a lot about this movie. And I feel like it was big at the time. And obviously, it won a bunch of awards. But I don't think people realize how well this movie is made and how I feel like you could show it to pretty much anyone and they would get invested, you know? So the film centers around a man. He's 18. His name is Jamal Malik. And the movie starts out, he is one question away from winning 20 million rupees on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire in India. He is one question away, but he is being interrogated because they believe that he cheated his way to victory. So he's kind of being tortured at the beginning of the movie. It's pretty gruesome, and it's just like, oh my God. And the whole film is basically calling into question how he did it. What was his way? Was he cheating? Did he, is he really smart? And basically you see an unraveling through this character throughout his life, yet it is tied with the questions in the show that he is being asked. So right away when the movie starts, I was immediately invested right away. The editing in that intro sequence. So there are some of my favorite intros in movies before like the title card pops up. This is definitely one of them. Just to start out so quick and in your face. Like I'm telling you, the opening shot is Jamal Malik and the guy is interrogating him and he just slaps him and you're just like, wait, what's going on? And then the question pops up. It does the intro question. And then it starts cutting back and forth between him on the show and him being interrogated. And you're like slowly putting things together. And before you know it, in that brief, probably like 3 or 4 minutes before the title card pops up, you kind of know what's already happening. And I'm like, wow, that is such a testament to like the editing, the choice of what they wanted to show, and how you want to introduce people to this story. So yeah, it's one of my favorite intros of all time. But after that title card, it cuts back to when he's a kid, jumps back forward when he's getting asked questions, and then it'll jump back and forth. So yeah, it's just a really, really well edited, put together story that I think a lot of people would get something out of, There's so much that I just love about this movie, and I just can't wait to talk about it. So yeah, Wallied, I guess first impressions, what were you thinking?
I really loved this movie so much. I was very surprised how sucked in you get from the moment it begins. I really love like just the pace of the film, just the quick editing that Danny Boyle does really well.
Yeah.
I especially like the way it would cut back between like him getting slapped, him getting asked like the questions during the game. It's such a perfect way to show exposition in a film.
Yeah.
And I've never seen a film use exposition so creatively as much as this one. And it's like a perfect way to show like Jamal's character development and how these questions and his kind of way that he was able to figure them out through these memories is such an incredible way to get to know this character. It's like the perfect way to kind of tell this story through this like game show.
Yeah. And they obviously they use the license of the actual show Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. So I grew up watching that show kind of a lot.
Yeah,
So
same here.
seeing that and how they choose to film it, they actually use a lot of the camera angles and stuff that they use on the actual show when he's on it. Sometimes it'll break, it'll, go from a different point of view, a different shot. But they use that the show's premise to its advantage. A lot of the musical cues and things like that really add to it. And even like the lighting on the show, it's like he's not even on the show yet, and it shows him and the host of the show before they go on, and there's like this light like spinning around where they're standing, and it's just like, wow, this is very like striking, I guess that's one of the pluses of the film for me is oftentimes the lighting is just so like just grabs your attention, and you're just like, wow, this looks
absolutely.
very almost like a painting,
Yeah.
So anyways, it cuts after the title card, shows him as a kid, and it shows him and his brother. His brother is Salim, and it doesn't start all the way from when they were born.
Yeah.
It just shows them from when they were kids, and it's already just pertaining to what we are being asked with the questions,
Yeah, of course.
And that's something that I really love about this movie because I don't know. I feel like some people, they do those types of movies, whereas, this movie is not based on a true story, but it has that presentation that it is.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when they do those stories, they start out from birth and then they go all the way until death. And it's like,
yeah.
okay, I get what we're seeing, but oftentimes when they do that, it almost feels like, okay, how interesting can a person be from the moment they're born?
Yeah, it just feels like a Cliff Notes version of like their
Yeah.
life. And it's usually sometimes cheesy when it's
Yeah.
done. But I love that the film just mostly, I was actually kind of surprised that the first half of the film was just mostly focused on like Jamal and Salim as a kid.
Yeah.
As like kids pretty much. And it's really, really just entertaining and fantastic because the child acting is just absolutely incredible from those two
Amazing.
kids. And then on top of it, like just that whole like side of the film, like showing their relationship, and you see in the second half how much they've changed after like them being kids and teens. It's like super incredible, like seeing Salim like kind of turn out so different, where he gets revenge on the guy who kind of was like the orphanage pretty much,
like kidnapped, abducted, yeah,
manipulating kids and like taking their eyes out. Like he kills him, and it's like you notice in him that he changes a lot, and you see him even go to like the second crime boss to tell him like, oh yeah, I've killed him pretty much. And it's like he ends up going to work with him, and it's like he gets sucked into this like life of crime almost, you know. It's very incredible, and I loved how the film portrayed it. And it's like you see the opposite side of like with Jamal, where it's like he has this regular job, he doesn't live like the most interesting life, but him going on this game show and him still looking for his lost love, I feel like is just the absolute heart of the film for me. You know?
And I don't really see that a lot, showing like a sibling kind of, I guess not rivalry, but how they're brought up and they end up in polar opposite directions. That's something that really I appreciate about this film, and not only the fact that they show how their upbringings are pretty much the same, they're very similar, you know, but it's just some happen to do different things, take a darker turn, and some just, you know, Jamal didn't want any of that, you know, that wasn't who he was. And they're both a byproduct from where they came from, yet they end up in completely different situations, you know,
just from like the simple little choices that they make in the film.
Yeah. And the film really gets into it. They show a lot of dark stuff that does happen. Obviously, these kids, very early on, they show that they lose their mom, you know? And that's one of the questions is about, who's this religious figure? What were they holding in their hand, you know?
Yeah.
And you cut back and right away, they just get into it. Like it shows him and Salim playing in the water for like maybe a couple seconds. Then before you know it, the sound cuts out and you see this whole mob of people rushing,
just raiding their like place pretty much.
And it's just like, whoa, like there's like not even really like any setup, but yet you know what's going on. And the mom tells the kids to run and she ends up getting hit in the head and falls in the water. And you're just like, what's going on? And then you follow the point of view of the kids. They're running through this, you know, village that's being destroyed. People are burning things, lighting people on fire, and it's very gruesome and very dark.
You don't even see the police doing anything. They almost just kind of are just bystanders.
Yeah, it's really, really insane because it's like you see them, these kids are like 7 or 5 or 6 or however old, really young, and it's just like, what? How do you live after that situation? How do you get past seeing your mom die, you know? And it's treated in such a interesting way. Like, again, I said this during the Monkey Man review, but it's very quick, like very quickly edited, very short, yet it's so effective, you know? And that was the one thing I mentioned in the Monkey Man review is just like they kind of showed maybe too much to where it's just it didn't feel as effective. Yet this doesn't show a lot pertaining to the mom. Yet when she, you know, passes away and ends up getting killed, it's so effective and it's so well done that I'm just like, that's kind of all I needed to see with that. I didn't need to see more than that, you know?
And I think it fits perfectly too, because it's like, those things do happen like in a situation like that. Like I'm sure that happens like super quickly. And it's like your mind is just not even able to like process something like that, especially like at a young age, like that the kids are in the film. And it's just very, very just well executed.
And you know, they pick up the pieces and then they move on, you know, and they're just trying to live in this world that is kind of against them, you know? So yeah, it goes through that. There's some very great moments in this opening, that first part. Obviously the mom dying, the part where he gets what's his name? The actor. He's like some Indian actor. He gets his autograph.
Oh yeah. It has to be one of the funniest poop jokes I've seen in a long time.
There is humor in it too.
Yeah.
Like they show him as a kid and he wants the autograph for one of his favorite actors at the time. And what he is willing to do to get that is just like, oh my God. Yeah, it's like funny and it's heartwarming at the same time. It's just like, wow, to him, this means
so much.
So much.
And it says a lot about his character too, because he is willing to go far and to risk so much for the things that he wants, you know, and especially near the end. It's like such a satisfying, rewarding payoff and everything.
Definitely. Yeah, it goes in a lot of different ways that you just really aren't ready for and you're not expecting. But eventually you start to catch on like, okay, when they go through these questions, we're probably going to get like a flashback pertaining to what's going on, you know? Yeah. But then there are instances where he's asked questions and he just doesn't know the answer. He's like, I don't know.
Yeah, more of just like a lucky guess.
Yeah.
Almost, you know?
One of the funny ones is they ask him who's on the $1,000 or
the $100
rupee. Yeah.
Oh yeah, the 1,000 rupee.
And he doesn't know. He's like, I don't know. And he's like, the interrogator's like, my 5-year-old daughter knows who that is. It's Gandhi, you know? Yeah, he knows who's on the $100 bill.
just because that memory just means so much to him.
And it's just like, wow, this is so, it goes in ways that you aren't expecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like Wallied mentioned, they show this pretty graphic scene where these kids are all brought to this like orphanage, and basically they're forced to perform in public so they can earn money. And I guess, you know, that's how these kids are used.
Yeah, pretty much.
But there's a dark side. Some of these kids will get deformed. They'll get, you know, these sick people will do these operations on them to make them more sympathetic to normal people. So they're more inclined to give them money. One of Jamal's friends at the orphanage ends up getting blinded. They pour like hot oil or something in his eyes.
Yeah, it's very disturbing.
And they were about to do the same thing to Jamal. And yeah, it's graphic. And they don't obviously show like the actual oil being poured into their eyes, but just the thought of some people doing stuff like that is so sad. And
especially towards children too.
Yeah, and it also shows, you know, Jamal does have some luck on his side. He has people looking out for him, because when he's taken to get that operation done, his brother ends up saving him, you know, because he obviously cares about his brother and he doesn't want that to happen. So yeah, the movie will have those dark moments, but they'll also have moments of levity, of humor, and it all fits together very, very well, surprisingly.
Yeah. That's one thing I really love with Danny Boyle's films, is that his films are like a roller coaster, you know, especially with those like high moments where it's just like an adrenaline rush. And especially with like the more slower moments where it's like you get to like just sit and know these characters, is just very just incredible. And I love the drama he's able to create.
Yeah. One thing I forgot to mention, shortly after his mom passes away, they are leaving that village and they notice a girl who is standing there alone. And they just pretty much are like, follow us. You know, Jamal is like, you can come with us. And the girl's name is Latika. And little do you know, that's going to be very important to what's going on. Early in the movie, they show images of this woman, yet it's not really explained who she is. I like that Danny Boyle does that. He'll drop these like seeds and stuff early on in movies, and you're kind of just seeing an image without
the context. Yeah. It's like little foreshadowing details that'll come into play later.
Yeah. Her introduction is really, it's short, but it's effective. And I don't know what it is, but I just 100% believe it. I'm just like, wow. That's just like the sympathetic side of Jamal being a 5-year-old, whatever, wanting to help someone else out, even despite seeing his mom die, seeing all that stuff happen. He's still open and sympathetic. He's not, you know, gonna turn his back on people, you know?
I mean, you even see it from the opposite side of Salim. Like when they see her like in the rain, he's like, no, don't help her out.
Yeah.
You know? And you see just kind of the opposite with Jamal, where he's like, no, come on, let's go, you know? So again, it kind of shows like just their characters and like just their personality traits really well.
Yeah. Small stuff, but again, it's effective and it just communicates a lot to who these characters are in brief moments. But as the story goes along, there's a time jump. So now it shows them at a part in their life when they are probably, I would say, around like 12, 14, 12 to that 12, 15 14, age. Yeah. That transition is really awesome. So these kids, basically Jamal and his brother start like scamming people on this train. They basically like steal stuff. They become like these train riders basically. And Latika was pretty much left behind at that orphanage. And they're on this train, does this little montage with music playing. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then it shows them fall off the train. And they do like these close-up shots of them like falling in this dirt and stuff. And they use that as like a transition into, oh, now they're older, you know?
Yeah.
And that's so cool. And it's so like unique. I'm just like, oh, wow, that's something I was not expecting.
Yeah, it's like a perfect time jump.
Yeah. And the middle age kid actors, they do a really good job too. They all really feel like the older counterparts, you know?
Yeah. It's like the perfect casting for that film.
Perfect. And it shows them, obviously they've been doing it a while. They basically scam people to get money to, you know, stay alive. But you can always tell that Jamal is kind of being not manipulated, but just influenced by his brother. Obviously, his brother's older, and he says in the beginning, like, I'm the elder. I have to watch out for us. You need to listen to me.
Yeah.
But then there's some humor in that situation, too. So when they're at the Taj Mahal.
Am I in heaven?
So funny.
I jot that down in my notes. I thought that was such a perfect way to start that scene.
They scam like these German people, and he's basically like Jamal, like they think he's like a tour guide, these German tourists, and they're like, well, we're on a rush, we need to see the tour. And so he takes them on this tour of Taj Mahal, but he doesn't know anything about it. He just makes up stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's a 5-star hotel. And the construction wasn't completed on time, so there's no rooms, there's no elevators. But then he's like, the pool was finished on time, and it shows the pool. And it's just like, I don't know, it shows the humor of it too. Like these kids are in this dark situation. Jamal's in a very dark situation, yet he still finds those moments, you know, to be a kid, pretty much.
That was definitely like the more lighthearted side of the film, was that whole Taj Mahal sequence.
Yeah, and you really felt like you needed it, because after seeing what these kids are going through, and obviously them leaving Latika behind, you need moments like that, because in the present day, when it cuts to these questions, you still get a very distinct hint that Jamal is not happy. You know, it shows him going through these questions, and obviously he's reliving these traumatic moments from his past. But even then, when he wins money, it doesn't really like mean anything to him.
It doesn't seem as exciting. He's living with a lot of like remorse and regret for not finding her earlier, or, you know, not being able to work out his relationship with his brother better. Yeah.
And you see the pinnacle moment of him being on this show and what's leading up to that. And it kind of, you start to realize like something very pinnacle had to happen right before this that we're leading up to, that I'm missing out on. But it goes through that Taj Mahal sequence, and they end up going to like this opera to like steal people's purses.
Yeah.
And they're like watching like this performance happen. But then you see Salim's side of it, and these kids, they're there for money. Jamal is focused on this show, and you see this romantic like story taking place.
It's like a great juxtaposition where it's like this like really beautiful classical music's being like played over like these kids like basically stealing like all of their items. It's such an incredible use of juxtaposition I haven't seen in a while. Yeah,
really good. And you see Jamal, it triggers him to be like I left Latika behind. I need to put in an effort to find her. Dude, you can just tell like he's not forgotten this person.
No,
you know. So then they want to go back to the slum they were in to try to find her, and they end up running into the old owner of the orphanage, and he's obviously still has Latika, very dark. It alludes to what she's being used for. Obviously,
it's implied.
Yeah, and it's really bad. And what ends up happening is, to get her out of there, Salim has a gun, and he's not going to go back there. The owner of this sick place, the one who took them in, basically sees them as his property. And he's telling Salim and Jamal that, like, you guys are my property. Like, you guys ran off.
Yeah.
And Salim's like, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
So he pulls out a gun, and, you know, he's like, give me all your money, this and this. Basically, you can just tell that Salim is in a very, very dark place, and he just sees people as like commodities at this point. You know, what can you provide for me? That's all that really matters to me.
Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to mention with that scene too is it's something I picked up on the second time seeing it, is there's almost this like sense of like abusive power from some of the adult figures in Jamal and Salim's life that I was very surprised by. And it almost kind of shows you how some of these people will take advantage of them just for anything, you know? And even through all that, they still are able to get out of that struggle on their own.
Really though. So Salim obviously just, he sees no way out. He shoots him, shoots those, or doesn't shoot the other people there, but he's basically like, let's go, we gotta leave. Latika's very quick to just pick up the money and be like, let's go. Jamal seems to be the only one remorseful and like,
He's just very shocked.
what did we do?
Yeah.
Like, what just happened? Like, and you start to see the product of the world that they are living in, how Salim is become further removed from his humanity. And also with Latika too, like her picking up the money right away, going with Salim, being like, Jamal, let's go. Like, these kids are very messed up, you know?
Yeah. They've experienced a lot just from like the past 5-6 years.
And obviously Jamal has too, but I will say something that I feel like they're alluding to is Salim being an older brother maybe shelters a lot of that from Jamal. You know, maybe he doesn't want him to go through those moments and do those things. Because obviously Salim's had this gun for who knows how long. Who knows?
Yeah. Who knows how
many
he got it?
Yeah, who knows how he got it? Who knows if he's killed anyone else? And then they go back to this hotel, and Salim ends up leaving and confronts, you know, this other mob boss who is, I guess, probably like a rival to their old owner, I guess. And Salim pretty much enlists in like a life of crime at that point. You know, that's just the direction that he feels like can provide for what he wants, the money, you know, not having to worry about that anymore, not having to steal, you know, and do all that other stuff, being kicked out of places. And so he goes to him and says, I killed him, you know, and I'm going to kill everyone else unless, you know, I get what I want. And very dark, really, really sad. And Salim ends up going back to the hotel and he kicks Jamal out. He tells Jamal that he has to leave, this and this. I'm the elder now. Points the gun at him. Crazy situation. It's just like, oh my God, like what is going on?
Takes his girl.
It's alluded to what happens with her and Jamal. That was the last time he had seen him up until they were older, you know? And it goes back to when he's being interviewed and the detectives who are interviewing him, the cops, you can really see them start to change. At first, it was, we know you did this. It's obvious you're cheating.
Yeah.
To, wait a minute, this kid's story is kind of insane. And it's, you can see them start to like
kind of
get emotional and question what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that whole aspect to it too. Them jumping back to modern, you know, day or whatever. It still really like provides like a nice break, I guess, in between all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah, because it's just so heavy and so intense.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you break from that without doing like a time jump or whatever? So again, tying it into the point of him getting questioned about this game show is so smart, and it's just such a good narrative choice that it provides those breaks to be able to cut back to something else that is maybe a little less tense and a little less heavy-handed, you know? And it gives you an insight to how Jamal has processed this stuff. You know, what does he think of it now that he's older? How has it affected him? What does he want to tell these people, you know? So yeah, really great stuff. I don't want to get into the ending just yet, because there's some stuff I want to mention with it. Obviously, for me, one of the big pluses of this movie, but all Danny Boyle movies are like this. I feel like he has his signature look and imprint on his films, but the look of this film is just, to me, just amazing.
Yeah.
I am not normally a fan of Dutch camera angles. For those of you guys who don't know, a Dutch camera angle is when it's tilted to the side. Usually it's to portray like
uncomfortable feeling.
Uncomfortable. But in this movie, he uses it for those aspects sometimes, but sometimes the Dutch camera angles in this movie are amazing. And it fits so well. One of the ones I love is when Latika's out in the rain and it shows her just kind of sitting there, you know, just trying to play with the puddle or whatever. And it just shows a quick shot of her as a little kid, and the Dutch camera angle's tilted, but it aligns like with the ground, and you see the rain falling, and it just looks amazing. I'm like, oh my god,
it's like eye candy.
yeah. And then the lighting in it is so good. Another thing I love about this movie that I feel like some movies don't do as much as they should, especially a lot of modern movies, is the use of foreground and background.
Yes,
They'll show these characters, these kids sometimes in the background, and in the foreground you see the city and what's going on. You see people living, you see like people cooking things, or you see like just normal people walking, and it really helps it feel real, and it helps it feel like alive, you know?
Yeah.
At no point in this movie when I'm watching it does it feel like a movie set or you know, a sound stage or whatever. Even when they're on the game show, it shows, you know, some of these, like, it'll cut, like there's one shot I love. It's Jamal like pondering over this question. And like I said, most of the time it'll show like the points of view of like the TV show, the cameras that they use and film. But one shot they cut, it's close to him. He's pondering over a question in the foreground. And then you see in the background the studio camera like coming closer to him, and it's just like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, I saw it as like a way of them portraying like pressure almost.
Yeah.
Him being under all this pressure to get this question right.
So good. I don't know. Did you like the look of this film?
I really, really did. I loved the way it was using yellows and blues. Like just like the atmosphere of the film is so incredible. You know,
Amazing.
it's like you're almost there in India. And it's like, I love a lot of those like overhead shots where it just like it shows you like the big scale of like the city, and like even the kids like just walking, or it's like they feel so small in this very big city.
Yeah.
And then of course with Danny Boyle's most of his movies, they always have like those really incredible running sequences where it's like it's going quick, and some of them kind of have like this, I don't know what kind of camera, I don't know if they changed like the frame rate on the camera at some points, but it gives it like this really cool like stop motion kind of effect that I really, really loved in the film, and it really impressed me. It gave it that like kind of surreal, dreamlike quality almost. And then for me, I would say like the colors, I feel like the yellow represents like danger and like fear almost, because you see in the film like the girl wearing yellow at the train station, you know, and he's wearing blue as like a sign of like hope and love almost. And I really loved that like kind of contrast between blue and yellow that I would see throughout the film.
They even take it to like the small degree that I think most directors would overlook. Obviously there's some language in the movie that's in Hindi, and the subtitles, they color them, you know?
It's really cool.
And I was like, they didn't have to do that, but I feel like Danny Boyle cared on such a small level to put that in the film that I was like, wow.
Yeah, it's a small detail for sure.
Yeah, I never really would think to do something like that, yet it adds, you know, it adds something to the film.
It adds a lot, yeah.
Yeah.
And then the music too is just phenomenal. Not only
So
like
good.
the score from
A.R. Rahman.
Yeah, A.R. Rahman is just fantastic, especially towards the second half where she's like, we'll get into it later, but when she's like just going through like walking or running through the street to go find the TV it's such an incredible use of music. And then on top of it, like the train sequence we were talking about earlier, where it uses Paper Planes by MIA, is such an incredible like fit to the film. And because I notice with some films, they sometimes will put music, but it doesn't match like the lyrics to the song, or it just feels kind of out of place. But when I see like at least this movie and like some of Danny Boyle's other films, like the music feels so natural, and it feels like such a way to like progress the story that I'm like, I don't know how he like even thinks of coming up with some of the like songs for this film and finding like the best way to place music in the film.
Amazing. Obviously, I know we've talked about it with Edgar Wright. We've talked about it with James Gunn, but I do feel like Danny Boyle does that very, very well, picking music and selecting what song can express this mood of what's going on in this situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if that Paper Planes song was written for this movie. I feel like I need to look that up.
It almost seems like it was.
Fits really well. It's where it's like, whoa. But then the only reason I think that is because MIA is on a song in the intro of the movie.
So that was her.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
gotcha.
that
I was
her.
like, was that MIA?
And that was an original composition for the movie. So I'm like, I need to, maybe it was written for this movie and I didn't know that. Obviously, that song was super big at the time. But yeah, music in the movie is just absolutely amazing. I think Latika's theme is one of my favorite musical compositions in movies, period.
Yeah.
It is one of the most beautiful yet really simple compositions. And I don't know what it is. Every time I hear it, I get the chills on my arms. Like I'm in like a heightened state and I'm just like, wow, this is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I just love that theme, that motif that they use throughout the movie. It feels hopeful, but it also feels sad. It just invokes a lot of emotions, you know?
Yeah.
So kudos to A.R. Rahman. Obviously, he's a super big, Indian composer.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad they got him for this movie. And then obviously he won the Oscars, so amazing.
Which is a big W from the Oscars.
Yeah, and eventually, if we talk about it, Danny Boyle brought him back for 127 hours, and he does absolutely amazing work on that movie. But yeah, I think this has to be one of my favorite scores in movies, period. I just love it so much.
Yeah.
I remember at the time when this movie came out, me and my family, we went and bought like the CD. That was back when people listened to CDs. And yeah, that was like hearing that soundtrack was just like so amazing.
Yeah.
And then there's some darker stuff that invokes a lot of like angst and terror and paranoia, and it's just like, wow, this is
loved the
amazing.
music when Salim is going to the crime boss guy. Like I really loved like those very punchy drums.
Yeah.
And that almost kind of like hip hop instrumental like sound pretty much.
And it was like showing that dark underworld and everything that goes on. And it's just like, wow, this kid's really out of his element, you know? And that song really portrays that. But then I'll have to say, Danny Boyle again, like, if you've seen Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, there's music that is used in that show, and he uses it in this movie, and it works so well. One of my favorite parts of the movie, later on, towards the end, Jamal is calling Latika. Well, he's calling his brother Salim. It's the only number he knows. He's using the phone a friend option on the show.
Yeah.
And Latika's watching it on TV, but then she also starts to realize, like, wait a minute, Salim gave me his phone. And Jamal says on the show, he's like, I'm calling my brother. It's the only number I know, pretty much.
Yeah.
So then Latika starts running back because she left the phone in the car.
Oh yeah.
But they use a song. They use that same song that you've heard a million times if you've seen Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. No pun intended. When they phone a friend.
Oh.
Yet it's so effective, and it works so much to that scene of like her running back to the car in time to answer.
And I love that intensity of that scene and the way it built up. It's so incredible.
So amazing. And yeah, just overall, so much stuff to talk about with this movie.
I was literally screaming at my screen when I saw that scene. I was like, no, hurry, please, come on.
Crazy. So yeah, I guess after talking about some of the more technical side that we love, one thing I would love to mention is Danny Boyle for this movie actually has a co-director. Her name is Loveleen Tandon. So originally what had happened is she was a casting director on this movie.
Okay.
And her main job was to help cast more of the local people from India, which obviously are the kids. The kids grow up, and they wanted that to be more of a traditional side, because obviously it was her choice to have them speaking in Hindi, because it was like, you need that in there. You need to have these languages, and you need to show that side. Otherwise, it may feel a little ungenuine, you know?
Yeah, of course.
So she helped with obviously a lot of that. But slowly, Danny Boyle realized, I need her on set every day. I need her there to translate. I need her there to help with these kids, get the emotions out, help them with, you know, how they're reading their lines. Because you can give these lines and just to, you know, the kids or adults or whatever and be like, just say it in Hindi. And the translation won't come out as
You
it's
think it'll
intended.
be, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was the best decision for this film because I feel like if that were to happen, I don't think it would pan out as well as it did.
Yeah. And before
Especially,
he started to realize, like, I need her there to help with that stuff. And before you know it, she's giving direction to these kids, and she's, you know, telling them how to read this, how to do this, how to invoke these emotions. And Danny Boyle realized, like, she's directing, you know?
Yeah.
So he fought for her, got her this co-directing credit in the film. And that's just something that I'm like, wow, that's amazing.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
really
awesome.
know too many stories like that, you know? To start as like just a simple casting director, not a simple, but just a casting director, you know, to being a co-director of this movie is kind of insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that was another little background piece of information I wanted to mention.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't know that.
And the kids do really, really well in this movie. I can't overstate that enough. Like,
Yeah, some of the best child acting I think I've seen in a film in a long time.
yeah, absolutely amazing. Were there any like other technical aspects of the film? Obviously, Danny Boyle has his signature flair, like Wallied mentioned, running.
Of course. Yeah.
He also loves to do like those Dutch camera angles, like I'd mentioned. When you're watching it, if you guys watch this movie, notice with the Dutch camera angles, there's quite a few of them in the film. If you simply, maybe don't pause the movie, but just try to picture it horizontally. That was something that I really did when I was watching this time.
Okay.
There's shots where it's at a Dutch camera angle and you see that in part of it, they show more lighting than they would in a horizontal angle. Or they show a piece of the background. Like there's one shot of Jamal, he's like sitting there and shows like a statue behind him. And the Dutch camera angle is able to capture that statue like behind him. And it's like, if this was horizontal, I feel like wouldn't see that. I wouldn't, you know, notice that as much, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, were there any other technical aspects that?
Yeah, for me, I really loved the sound design in this film. I thought it really captured like just the atmosphere of like India and like really just put you into like that intensity of like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. And I loved that they used like all the sound effects and music from that show. A perfect example of like the sound design for me working really, really well was like that sequence we talked about at the beginning where Jamal's mom is like basically getting hit in the head and like all these people are like raiding like the village pretty much. It just the way it would like just muffle and like it like kind of, it's like a low filter and then like it goes back to like normal sound when they start running. It's like such a incredible sequence where it's like everything is just stopping around you, you know? And it's like, how do you even react to a situation like that? And it really puts you into that, like, into the shoes of like Jamal and his Salim. Yeah. And I thought it was just a very, very incredible sequence. I love how I was very surprised. So I saw it a second time before we recorded. And I love that the end is really built into the beginning with this film. Everything is really set up with like the brother throwing the money in the bathtub, which comes into play later. The cops torturing him like throughout, and then like you see it a bit towards the end. And then I also really love like the question that they show at the beginning of the film before the film starts, and then like how they answered like the question at the end. It was like a nice way to like just end the film.
And that like the question asked at the beginning is very much a theme throughout the whole movie. Is our lives, are they written, you know? Like, is it already planned out? Is there a set plan for each one of us, you know? Do we have a destiny that we align with and we need to, you know, it's going to happen one way or another? And that's something that reoccurs throughout the whole film. And obviously with these questions and everything, it's just in this movie, they lean towards that. And it's like, he was meant to go through this stuff. Like this stuff all had a meaning, not only in influencing who he is and who he was, but it pertains to this whole show, you know, that he's on. And you just really get a distinct feeling that it was meant for him. You know, he was meant to go on that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite lines in the film, and I thought was just really funny, was the whole chilies on his willy.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I put here karma moment in my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I haven't mentioned until now that I want to mention before we get into the ending is the host of the show, Anil Kapoor. He does such a good job in this movie. He very much portrays like a game show host, as you would expect. Very, you know, comedical, smiling, maybe have a elevated sense of pride and everything.
Yeah.
But the movie ends up showing a different side to him later on that I was just not expecting. And the reveal of it was so like, I was like, wait, what the hell?
Yeah.
So what happens is towards later on, Jamal gets asked a question about cricketing, basically. And they show a flashback kind of showing, you know, his whole knowledge on cricketing.
Through like the TV.
Yeah, he goes to see Latika. He has found her after not seeing her for so long again, after Salim kicked him out of the hotel. And she's with the leader that Salim answers to and serves to. Cricketing's on the TV in the background, but to him it doesn't matter because he's there with Latika. That really is all that matters.
That's more important.
Yeah. So with this question, he doesn't know anything about who the greatest cricketer was. So he's stumped. He's like, I don't know. And he's in the bathroom. And he's just there. He's like, basically, he's pretty much about to realize that he's going to be kicked off the show. He won't answer. He's done, you know? And Anil Kapoor's character comes in and he's going to the bathroom and he's talking to Jamal. He's like, you know, there's only ever been one other person to do this before you and get as far as you've gone. And that's me. You know, I was once where you were. And now I am where I am. And if you play your cards right, it's going to be you too at the end of the night. Yeah. And you just get a real sense of feeling of like, wow, this guy, I feel like he cares a lot. And it's not even about the game show anymore. And he really is looking out for Jamal and he wants him to win this thing. Then the reveal is before he leaves the bathroom, he's washing his hands and very cleverly the steam gets on like the window and everything. Yeah. And he's just like, he's again says the line of the film. He's like, you know, maybe it's written for you. Maybe it's in your cards to win this. And then Jamal is just standing over the sink and then he's about to get ready to leave and he glances over at the mirror and the answer is written out in the glass. So the host gave him the answer, you know. Crazy. And it's just like, whoa, you know, it's just like, all right, wow, that's really crazy, you know. That's cool for him to do that. And at that moment I was just like, wow, that's awesome. Then he goes back on and he has two answers to pick from, and the answer that the host wrote on the mirror was B, but Jamal ends up picking D instead. Yeah. And I had I remember when I first saw it, I was just like, what is he doing? I was like, he has the answer. He gave it to him. I was like, what the hell is going on? And the host is taken aback. He's like, wait, are you sure it's not B? And he's like, nope, I'm picking D. And he's like, and it's funny, there's a little back and forth there for a little bit. The host basically trying to get him to pick B. Yeah. And you can tell he's getting frustrated, but Jamal's set. He doesn't want to pick B. He picks D. And then it's revealed that was the right answer. Yeah.
And feel like it's perfect too, because like it does set that up where like you hear the host talking to him before the show comes back on, where he tells him like he's all, maybe you'll get to be like me and all
Yeah.
that. And I think when he had said maybe, that was kind of like the trigger where he was like, oh, maybe this isn't the right answer.
Yeah. And Jamal was able to analyze what he was saying, how he had said it, and how he's been on that show, and start to realize, is this guy looking out for me?
Yeah.
I don't really know if he is.
It's like a sign of manipulation. It kind of goes back to like the point I was bringing up about like the abuse of power, because he is a very famous TV host,
Yeah.
and he's kind of like just trying to take advantage of this guy by telling him, oh yeah, just pick this answer, almost
Yeah.
like manipulating him into pretty much like losing,
And Jamal has seen the dark side of humanity growing up and everything. And I think that made him very keen to who people are, What if they have malicious intent? What if they're not looking out for me? It's not that he's not trusting or doesn't trust people, but it's just he's probably more keen on his senses because of how he was brought up,
Yeah.
And yeah, you get the reveal that he was trying to sabotage him. He didn't want to have someone as successful as he was. It's his show. It's his story.
Very egotistical.
Very egotistical. And I didn't think they would do that. And nor did they have to. They could have just simply had him been the funny comedic game show host, whatever, and that would have been fine. But they chose to add that angle of he was also had that same success story.
Yeah.
And how do people sometimes are very envious of other people who are achieving success and attaining it, you know?
How are people going to handle that success after it is over?
Yeah. And it's like you have your people. It shows the street sides of people who are rooting for him. They want him to win. It's a hopeful story of an underdog, pushing past everything and, winning. And they attach to that. But then there's the other side of people who don't want him to win. And they show it very much with this host. And that was just, to me, a great reveal. It was something I was not expecting. It caught me off guard.
Definitely.
Yeah. So effective and so well done. But yeah, Anil Kapoor's performance in it is really good.
Fantastic.
When they show that other side to him, it's like, whoa, this guy's kind of evil.
Yeah, great range. Absolutely.
Yeah, great range. And I think Jamal and Dev Patel and Latika's actress Frida Pinto, they are raised in Britain or London, I believe.
Yeah.
So they got Anil Kapoor as more of like the traditional Indian actor, you know? And that's very cool for them to have those dynamics, and
it's a good blend.
Yeah, really kind of put everything together. So the people questioning him, the cops end up finding, there's nothing we can do. He's
innocent.
He's innocent, and one of my favorite quotes is the main interrogator is just like, you're too truthful,
Yeah.
Because at one point he basically admits to being an accessory to murder to avoid the charge of fraud.
Yeah.
And the cop tells him, he's like, that's not really a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
But Jamal tells him, when someone asks me a question, I tell them the answer, He's not trying to lie or do anything like that.
No.
So they release him, and he ends up going back on the show that same night to finish out the last question. And yeah, it's built up, shows his story and how many people are watching. People are rooting for him. They want him to win. And Jamal has the very real choice to back out. He can take 10 million and leave, but he chooses to play, and people root for that. They love that. So he goes for the final question for the whole 20 million. And lo and behold, is such a nice way to tie it out. The question is, there are 3 musketeers, Athos and Porthos. What was the name of the 3rd musketeer? And it ties back into the beginning when they were growing up, when they were little boys in school. And it shows right in the intro, they're brought into school, and the teacher's like, oh, he was reading Alexander Dumas' book.
Yeah.
And he's like, here come our very own musketeers. Here they are, you know, and he's angry at them. He doesn't like them.
Like hits the book with the
book
head
on his head. And it's so funny. And then later on, when they meet Latika, Jamal says, like, she could be the third musketeer, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a nice full circle moment. And you see it in Jamal's reaction. He's laughing. He's just like, oh my God, wow. Like, of course it would be that question.
Yeah.
But he doesn't know the answer. He doesn't know it. And he's just like, yeah, I don't know. And he just guesses. He's like, A.
Yeah.
And it ends up being right. And he wins. And it's just such a great moment. And yeah, he goes back to Latika and he meets her at the train. And
One last time.
And the movie ends on their kiss and everything. And it's just so beautiful. So well done. And I don't know, it's just amazing movie.
Easily one of my favorite endings I've seen in a long time. It is just incredible. Like just the way it wraps everything up, the way everything like it's so well done. Like especially with that Three Musketeers question, that's like a perfect way to just like build that up, and then him to get that question right just comes so full circle by the end.
And you're not expecting it. And it's so funny because it's like even the title Slumdog Millionaire, that sounds like past tense. So it kind of basically spoils the film, you know?
guess, yeah.
But it doesn't even really matter because it's like you start to realize like everything in his life, what he's doing, why he went on that show, who it was all for. He says it. He went on there because he thought Latika would be watching.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite moments in the film is where he's going to like the call center and he's calling Salim for like the first time in years.
Yeah.
And it's just like such an incredible, almost sad like way to like reunite with somebody almost, you know.
Really is, and really effective. And then the music comes in so nice. One of the things that I want to mention that I just love so much, and some people might say it's been done before or whatever, but I noticed this in Danny Boyle's movies. He'll often portray that pinnacle moment in different ways. So earlier it would show the scene of Latika smiling. You see this woman in yellow and you're like, it's almost like, who is that? But as you see the film, you know who it is. Mm-hmm. And when he shows that, the camera angle, it's like that stuttering shutter speed frame rate.
Yeah.
Where it's like stopping and starting. And it's so effective. So there's a pinnacle moment where Jamal was going to meet Latika. They had plans to meet at the train station. And you had Salim basically was ordered to bring her back. And in the moment they were supposed to get on the train and they were supposed to leave, he wasn't on the show yet. And he sees her, and that's the moment you see her look up at him. She's smiling. And before he knows it, he sees Salim running after her, and he puts it together, starts yelling at her, and she ends up getting taken, and he doesn't know. He goes to the house later on, and they're gone, and he's basically where he was before. He doesn't know where she is.
Yeah, he's back to square one.
Back to square one, and he just loves and cares about her so much. And Danny Boyle shows it again at the end. And it's one of my favorite tricks that I've seen a filmmaker do. He shows the footage of him running after her, but he plays it in reverse. Mm-hmm. To me, that is just such a understated thing to do. Oftentimes when you see flashbacks, it's very straightforward. You see the point of it. Yet his visual style and what he's choosing to do to show that pinnacle moment, but play it in reverse. I don't know. My interpretation of it is you have that moment where things went wrong.
Yeah.
In your mind, you play it over in your head and you want to do everything you can to change it before it went wrong. Mm-hmm. But in your head, it's like the way it's portrayed in the film is just like that moment is never real. That moment doesn't happen. So the way to show it is by playing it in reverse, because it's like you can never have that perfect moment, you know? And by playing it backwards, you show that mentality is not real. It shows it backwards because it's like this character trying to get past that pinnacle moment, and then it plays all the way in reverse back to basically a made up scenario. What if he did meet her at the train and they left without the show and everything? And to him, that would have been just as much as being on the show and winning all that money. To him, it was never about that. It's about this girl, you know?
Yeah.
So amazing. And I don't know. I love that so much. Obviously, I've seen movies, they play things in reverse. So it's nothing big, but Danny Boyle chose the exact right moment to do that. And I don't know. That's just something I love so, so much.
Yeah.
And it's really understated. And I don't know, that's like my favorite camera trick that he does. We mentioned a lot of them, the Dutch angles, the shuttering speed. I don't know, he does that. I've noticed a lot in his movies where he'll play that stuff in reverse, and I just love that so, so much.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I kind of saw it as him. It was a bit of jarring at first, but the second time seeing it, I almost saw it as like him, like kind of restarting that memory in just like a new way and a new perspective now.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like really, really cool. And I loved especially during that end sequence when he's like running up to her. It's like all these like all the clips that you've seen throughout the film, they all come into play, and it's almost like his life is like flashing before his eyes. You know, it's like after all the hardships and struggles that he's been through, it's all worth it for this moment.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. I don't know, I love this movie. I saw it when I was still, you know, just a young boy into action movies, and I don't know, this movie really changed my perspective on my limited viewpoint of how I saw movies, you know, and I appreciate this movie so much for doing that. Movies can be so much more than just the box I would put them in, and it expanded my range to a whole bunch of movies that I wouldn't have been willing to watch had I not seen this film. Obviously, it would have happened at some point, but I do attribute a lot to this movie for doing that. Yeah, I love it so much. Any detriments I really have are really small. I guess the only thing I noticed on rewatch that maybe I felt could have been just expanded, maybe just a little bit more. Salim's sacrifice, they show it in the film, but I feel like it wasn't completely earned for me. I feel like it was too much of a jump, because in the scene before, they show Salim running after Latika, basically kidnaps her, puts her in a chokehold, whatever, and they take her into that leader.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
And then in the next scene, he's giving her the phone and basically telling her, like, you know, I'm sorry for everything I did. But I feel like they didn't really show that change as well as I maybe thought they could have. I thought maybe there could have been a little bit more, because again, in that first scene, he's kidnapping her and he ends up injuring her.
Yeah.
And then in the next scene, he's laying down his life for her. And I'm like, that was maybe could have done just something a little bit more. But to me, that's a nitpick.
Tweaked. Yeah.
It still works.
Still very effective.
Still effective.
Yeah.
But that was something I did notice on rewatch that I felt maybe could have been different. Other than that, I don't know if I have too many downsides to this movie, honestly.
I'm going to be honest. I really don't have any downsides with this film. And I tried kind of looking, but I'm like, everything just feels so purposeful. There's so much intent. Everything works really well that like Danny Boyle and the co-director really wanted to get across. So yeah, I really don't have any issues with this film.
Yeah.
That dance sequence at the end was it reminded me a lot of like some of the Bollywood and like Hindi films that my dad would show me when I was younger. And it was just like such a perfect way to just end the film like that, you know, after everything that you've gone through. It was like, it's so cool. It felt like,
it's such a nice way to be like, this is a movie, you know, we're watching a movie. And, that dance sequence was so popular at the time. I remember everyone was learning that dance. Yeah. And it was even in probably Just Dance 2 or something.
Really?
That song's in there. Yeah.
Wow.
So there was such a big impact to that credit sequence. And obviously, that's such a good song.
Yeah.
A.R. Rahman, again, just knocks it out of the park. I really can't give him enough praise. I really wish he would compose more soundtracks here in the US, just because he's so good at what he does.
And, yeah, absolutely.
It's just, I wish I could hear it more, you know?
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, I guess In closing, again, one of my favorite films of all time. Score, it's crazy. I think I'm gonna give it a 10.
Do it. Hell yeah.
10 out of 10. I'm sorry, guys.
Dude.
It's my first 10 out of 10, but I just love this movie, and I actually hadn't rewatched it in a couple years, so seeing it again right away, I'm glued instantly. And it was so funny because I was watching TV and movies before that, and you're just kind of like half interested. You're just like, yeah, I'm watching this, and you're just kind of chiming in and out.
Yeah, for sure.
Immediately starting this movie, I'm just like,
It grabs your attention.
I'm grabbing my attention.
Quickly.
My phone's off to the side. I'm not even thinking about it. That's how well this movie is.
That's one thing that Danny Boyle does super well, is just grabbing your attention from the moment it begins.
But yeah, 10 out of 10 for me.
Hell yeah. Yeah, for me, I really, really loved this. This was a massive, massive surprise to me. I loved everything about this film. Incredible acting, incredible use of cinematography, great atmosphere. It's such
Music.
the music and sound design are just phenomenal. And then like the non-linear storytelling in this film is just so purposeful. It's so perfect that they use the game show as like a centerpiece to the film, that it works absolute wonders. And honestly, I'm like between this and Train Spotting, so some days who knows?
Nice.
Yeah, but for me, this film is a genuine masterpiece, and one that I will watch again till the end of time. God, I love this movie so much, man. It's a 10. It's a 10 out of 10 for me.
From both of us.
Yeah.
Wow. Watch this movie, guys, please. Like, I know it's fallen off a little bit more in the past couple of years. I know people don't really mention it as much. But as far as like best picture winners and everything, especially the nominees that year, this one by far succeeded everything else.
Well deserved. I didn't even know it got best picture until I looked it up after watching the movie. And well deserved. But 10 out of 10, perfect in every way. He outdid himself again.
I really can't recommend it enough. But yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad.
Yeah.
I was a little worried going into it. I was like, I don't know if maybe Wallied might find some holes in one of my favorite movies.
Yeah, well, the thing with Danny Boyle he's such an underappreciated director, because I feel like he really doesn't make the same movie twice. So it's like you never know what you're getting with him.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why I was just so surprised with this, because I was like, I wonder how he's gonna do a story like this. And
watching him behind the scenes, he's just so energetic. You can just tell that he just has such a love for filmmaking. And like you said, he's such a wide range. He's done action films,
horror films, music films,
biography picks. He's just such a well-rounded director, and I feel like people don't have his name up where it should be.
Yeah, it should be way higher.
Yeah. And most of all, just amazing visual storyteller. He really he knows how to work a camera.
Yeah, he knows how to show, not tell.
Yeah. Because even I noticed in many of his other films, when there are different cinematographers, you still see his stamp on it. You know it's Danny Boyle.
Yeah.
So yeah. Great, guys. I'm really glad. I'm glad Wallied liked it, and I encourage everyone to watch this movie.
Yeah, please check it out, guys. It's absolutely worth your time.
Yeah. I guess one thing I did in retrospect, I was looking up interviews and things, and I guess the question came up for me, that something that I thought of that I wanted to kind of just throw out there for Wallied. There may be a little disdain from some people that this movie wasn't made by someone who was Indian, Danny Boyle is very much, from the UK.
Yeah. He's British.
And maybe it's like, who is this guy to come in and do this thing, So the question I asked was, do cultural influence films or TV need to be told by someone from that culture, because that seems to be the moniker, especially now, people kind of want to say, and they're like, who are you to tell this story? There's very much questioning as to why things are like that, I guess, what is your opinion on that?
I guess for me, I guess it would depend because there are examples of like films where it's like you see American directors kind of directing like Japanese films or like more European films. And they usually do a pretty tastefully done job of like exploring more just the character kind of rather than the culture. So I feel like it would be kind of cool to kind of see more voices and like like a Japanese director directing like a Japanese because it's a bit more personal to them. But
Yeah.
I don't feel like it would be an issue though if you had like an American director directing a film about a Japanese writer, especially if that person is passionate about writing. Because like a film that comes to mind for me that I think of that example is like a film called Mishima: A Life in Four Chapters by Paul Schrader, where obviously Paul Schrader is not Japanese, but
Yeah.
he is very passionate about Yukio Mishima's writing, and the film mainly focuses his, instead of being a biography about the guy, it mainly focuses on his writing pretty much. And that's kind of like the main focus of that film and why that film works really well. So I feel like it obviously depends on like what kind of movie you're trying to make or what kind of topic you're going for.
I feel like more recently people have been questioning of that. Obviously for me, what it pertains to is very simple. Get the most talented director to make your story. That to me, that's what matters most. Obviously I want representation in film. I want, cultural significance and, stories to be told from that culture. I'm not trying to silence anyone, but it's who can portray that story the best. If it's someone who is of the same culture or race or whatever, great. If it's not, then okay, maybe people on that production who are from that race or culture can learn things, maybe they get their step into a new world that was maybe limited before. I noticed that a lot, especially being Native American. A lot of our people and race, they see everything else, all those directors and everything as like, who are they to come in and tell my story? Who are they to come in and do this?
Yeah.
And there are always going to be instances where I see what they're saying, but then I'm also like, what do we need to work on to get to that level? What do we need to do to where we're the storytellers that are picked first? I noticed it a lot with a show that came out a couple years ago called Res Dogs. Obviously, it's about Indians on the reservation and everything, but they got Canadian Native Americans to act in this thing. But they do a good job. They service the story. They don't ever feel, I never felt while I was watching it like, oh, this is a Canadian Native American and how dare they step on, I'm just like,
of course.
it works, to me, that's what matters.
Yeah.
And I notice, especially with my own culture, we can be, very limited, and we don't really want to step out of our own comfort zone and boundaries and things like that. So I guess maybe that was something that occurred to me while watching this film, is just like, Danny Boyle, he fought for that co-directing credit for that lady,
Yeah.
and he casted Indian actors for these kids. He did a lot more than maybe some other directors might do.
Yeah. I feel like as long as you're respectful with the culture and with like the people that you're casting, instead of like doing like a more whitewashing type of thing, I feel like you're in like the green zone with that. Cause I feel like I've noticed sometimes where they'll kind of remake some animes and sometimes they get more American actors. And it's like, well, that doesn't entirely work because it's like you're kind of missing the context of like, I guess the cultural context of like what made that anime special to begin with, So I feel as long as you're doing it for good intentions, I feel that like it's okay, know. But
and I guess one thing that I read while watching this movie is Bollywood films for a long time wouldn't ever make a movie like this. They wouldn't focus on because some people see as like, oh, when you talk about the bad stuff, you're focusing on the bad parts, you know? You're focusing on the parts that aren't our best, you know?
It doesn't look good on
It doesn't look good for us, you know? And some people will say that about this film. Like it doesn't show our people in a good way. It doesn't, but never once did I occur while watching this movie that like the misrepresentation of these people. If anything, I felt like it really
felt more
helped with the
genuine
film.
and
Yeah.
authentic
It
to that
really
story.
feels, like I said, with a lot of the foreground and background stuff, they show a lot of that stuff. And at any point, they could have just been like, we're going to do this from a soundstage in the UK, or we're going to, you know, but they didn't do that. Everything feels alive and real. And again, like you feel the culture so much in this movie, you know, just with the small stuff too. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at on it. And I noticed with looking at the credits for Slumdog Millionaire, Danny Boyle didn't write it, actually. It was a Hindi writer. So I feel like Danny Boyle probably saw that script and was like, let's make this come to life almost, you know? So.
And it's like at any point, they could have read the original book source material it's based off of Q&A. They could have just made an American or UK version. They could, you know?
Yeah,
but
it would have been not very good. But
they didn't want to do that, you know? So I don't know. I feel like with any time there's like a cultural representation with things, there are going to be those that are strictly, purely made for that culture, you know? There are always going to be those instances.
Of course.
But sometimes what might happen is you might have a director who can serve as like a gateway or a bridge into that, you know,
into that like world of cinema, because it is like, you know, Bollywood and Hindi cinema is so fascinating. You know, it's like a whole I could go into that for like 30 minutes, you know, because it's so crazy like how like those kinds of films are made and everything.
And I have such a deep respect for artists who do that. You know, they may not know the most about that culture, but they want to learn and they want to represent it. They want to be authentic where they can, you know, make those leaps to show representation in any form, any way, and where you can. And that's just, to me, that's the stamp of a good filmmaker and a good storyteller is, you know, something may be out of my wheelhouse, but I'm going to do everything I can to treat it with respect and care. And I'm going to, you know,
put time and detail. And like, you can just tell they're just so passionate about the idea too, also, you know?
But yeah, that was just a question that occurred to me while watching this movie. Because I did notice there was an interview with, I don't know who he was, but he was obviously grew up in Mumbai. And he had some issues with the film. He thinks it's great entertainment and everything, but he said it wasn't, you know, completely factual to how things are. But I don't think Danny Boyle was trying.
I don't think he was trying to do that.
Because if he would have done that, they wouldn't have been speaking in English. Like it's very clear. Like it's a movie, you know. Yeah. If you want to watch a complete actual representation, that's what those biography pics and things are for.
Yeah, that's what documentaries are for. Yeah.
Stuff like that. I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
All right. Closing out Slumdog Millionaire.
Fantastic.
Our first 10s, my first 10 as in this podcast. Can't recommend it enough. Please watch it, guys. And what are we going to be talking about on the next one?
So this one is going to be a bit more serious. I will say it is a slow burn, so it may take you a bit to get invested, but once you get invested, I feel like this film is very, very powerful. And so the film I'm going to go with is a film that I feel like kind of just came and went. Like it had some buzz during festival season, but I really want to shine light on this film because this film really impacted me in a way that I feel like very few films can do. So the film I'm going to recommend is a film called After Sun, directed by Charlotte Wells. It's from 2022. It has Paul Mescal in it. He is phenomenal in the film. And I guess all I'll kind of say about it without getting too into it is it's about a father and daughter who go on vacation. And the film, and it's a kind of more about like their relationship and just everything that unravels during this vacation, pretty much. And yeah, it's just a absolutely incredible watch that hit me very, very hard. And it's a film that I've just nonstop been thinking about since like I saw it last year. So,
all right.
Yeah. If you guys don't want to be spoiled for After Sun, directed by Charlotte Wells, make sure you guys watch it before the next episode comes out.
And that will close out episode 11.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, we're here. We're going to have on a guest relatively soon. I haven't told Wallied that, but there have been people who are expressing interest in me and wanting to join us on our show. But yeah, thank you guys for subscribing. Thank you guys for watching. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, just want you to know how much I appreciate you. Really means a lot. Seeing the views we're getting is great. Even if you're only here for a minute, I appreciate it. So yeah, thank you guys so much. It's always a joy talking movies. Yeah, anything you want to say?
Yeah, thank you all for listening. I'm glad I finally got around to watching Slumdog Millionaire finally. Just such an incredible film that I'm like, man, I want to see that again, honestly, after watching it twice. But yeah, thank you all for listening. I hope you guys have been enjoying these discussions, and hopefully it sounds really good to you guys and everything.
Yeah. Check us out on YouTube, Spotify. We also have an Instagram page, and we also have Letterboxd too, which I didn't know what it was, but I went on it, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's where the Zoomers are, man.
It has all our ratings and everything. I was like, oh, this is sick.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have all that stuff. Pretty much, if we feel the need to put ourselves on another platform, we will. Yeah. Pretty soon we'll be on Tinder.
Yeah.
The Awful Takes podcast. And if you match with us on Tinder, I just send you a movie to watch, and that's it.
You'll get the next recommendation before everybody else.
That's it. But thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Good day and good night, mates.